shocked when this happened. I guess it wasn't really like, you never really know when someone is feeling this way or thinking about taking their own life, but I guess there wasn't really any warning signs, and maybe there was, they just weren't noticed. I don't really know the details. And Josh's father said that after Zachary passed away, he became very concerned for Josh because he just seemed very down, which is obvious, that he would be that way, but I guess he kind of seemed more down than usual, and he slowly began to do better by 2008. And it takes time to heal with that kind of stuff, especially like I know I definitely wouldn't be okay for like ever. So Joshua began the process of healing, and he seemed to be doing better by 2008. And on May 8th, 2008, he decided to take a walk, and he told his sister Kate that he was going to go for a walk. And this was normal because he liked to go for hikes by himself, and so this wasn't thought of as weird that he was like, I'm gonna go for a walk. He didn't seem upset or anything. And Kate became concerned because once it got dark out, he was not home yet. So his family was like, where is he? And they weren't in full-blown panic even after he didn't come home when it got dark, but they were starting to become worried. But he was very free-spirited and adventurous, so they were kind of like, well, maybe he just went to a friend's or something. I don't know. They didn't really think it was that bizarre at first. But then Josh's father, Mike, called Josh's friends or anyone who might know where he was, but nobody had seen him. And on May 13th, which was 5 days after he disappeared, Mike finally called the police to report Josh missing. Now, people are probably, I thought this was weird, and other people I'm sure did too, but like I said, he was very free-spirited, and I don't know the background information, like if he would do this sometimes, just go off at night and like stay at a friend's or something, but I guess he didn't think it was concerning enough to call the police until 5 days later. But Mike had nothing to do with this, that we know of. I don't know, whatever, but okay. Basically what I'm trying to say is that, everyone does things differently, and the way people operate is always going to be different, so, you can't really judge him, even though I'm sure he wishes he would have called sooner. So, from the beginning, the police didn't really take this case seriously. What else is new? I hate it, but that happens so often, especially with people like Josh, who are either 18 or above, and who are already very free-spirited. Like, they thought he just ran away, basically. And so it was treated as a runaway case. And the police force, Josh's family, his friends, and neighbors searched the area where he said he was going for a walk and the nearby Parkland area for any signs of where he went, but they didn't seem to turn up much. And the police also didn't seem to be very interested because Josh was of legal age, and like I said from the start, they really just thought that he ran away to start a new life, which is just like, how often does that actually happen? After doing the initial investigation, they scoured the area for months, and they really did not uncover anything. And this led Josh's family to begin theorizing that maybe he really did run away to start a new life, to pursue his music career, or just to travel, because that was just the kind of person that he was. But they really didn't think that he would do this without saying anything. I think they were just hopeful that he was okay and that he would come back. And one of his older sisters actually had a quote where she case is so unsettling to me is because I wouldn't say severe, it's definitely not severe, but I have claustrophobia. I'm very, very claustrophobic, and that is like my worst fear ever. Being in a tight space like that, no. Nope. So, after they found him in the chimney, they were obviously very confused, and, let's see, sorry, so Chuck was confused and he called the police, and they arrived with the county coroner, who later positively identified the body as that of Joshua Maddux using dental records. Josh's family was notified of what they discovered, and they were obviously also confused. This cabin was only about 2 blocks away from the Maddux house, but the searchers didn't go over to the cabin because it just looked isolated, so they had missed it. And the police also said that because the area was so isolated, if Josh was stuck in there and yelling for help, it would have been very difficult to hear him, which is, oh my god, I can't, it's so upsetting. And the investigation continued into how he got in there. And the Teller County coroner, Al Bourne, found no drugs in Josh's system and no signs of foul play, including no bullet holes, knife marks, or broken bones. Bourne said, quote, "How he died is only a matter of speculation, but we know he did not starve to death because that takes many weeks. So then you go down the chain and you have dehydration, which can take just a few days, and the other thing would be hypothermia, which would take a day or two. We have no evidence to say which one came first." On September 28th of 2015, the coroner ruled Josh's death to be accidental. He suspected that Josh climbed into the chimney and then got stuck on the way down, basically. Stuck on the brickwork. And, sorry. And then, so he thought that the way that Josh was positioned in the chimney proved that he voluntarily was trying to gain access to the cabin and became stuck. He concluded that the most likely cause of death was hypothermia, like I said, as the temperature at the time of his disappearance between May 8th and 10th, 2008 had dropped to the high 20s Fahrenheit. And many were not convinced by the report, including Josh's family and the owner of the cabin, Chuck. And Chuck said that the chimney was fitted with a thick wire mesh that was hung from steel hooks used to keep animals and debris from becoming lodged inside the chimney or from entering the cabin. And this mesh was put on like 20 years before, and the coroner responded that during the investigation, no grate was found. However, Chuck cleared the air, saying that the demolition crew had gathered up the metal pieces before beginning the work, so the grate was gone. So it's very confusing, but basically, Chuck is saying, like, it would be really hard for him to get in there because there was this metal grate covering the chimney, and then the coroner said there wasn't a grate, and then Chuck said, well, that's because I took it down. So the case was then reopened 3 days after the initial conclusion was made by the coroner due to pushback with the grate being there, and also some other strange things wearing nothing, no underwear, nothing but a thermal shirt, and his clothes were folded. Like, what the fuck is going on? It's so creepy, and all this shit is so weird. So the coroner admitted to being stumped. I'm stumped, he said, after coming to his ruling. Like, dude, I mean, I don't know. I'm not criticizing. I'm just like, really? You're stumped now? Okay. Stumped by all this, especially since the clothes were folded. That didn't add up to him. And after reopening the investigation, the revised autopsy report said that the cause of death was accidental death, murder, or undetermined causes. So they basically were saying we don't know what happened to him, but it was an accidental death. Still, the police were continuing their investigation. They received several anonymous tips giving the names of suspects that could have had something to do with Josh's death. One of the suspects was a man who was incarcerated in a Texas jail who had previously spent time in Seattle and Portland prisons with history of violence. One tip given to the police said that Josh was seen with this man. However, after questioning the person, there was nothing uncovered, and because that happened so long ago, it was hard to connect the dots. And also, the coroner doubted that this person acted alone in the case because Josh was stuck in the chimney in a way that would be hard for one person to do if that is how he got in it. And in 2015, a Reddit post stated the name of this suspect, which was Andy, full name Andrew Richard Newman. Essentially, the post states that Andy was a very dangerous and unpredictable person, and the person who posted this said that Andy went to New Mexico at some point and began hanging out with a man who was a caretaker for an elderly man. He went over to this guy's apartment, and who was the caretaker of the old man, and when they were hanging out, the guy who he became friends with said he needed to take a shower, and when he was in the shower, Andy and the elderly man were alone, and when the guy got out of the shower, Andy was gone, and the elderly man was dead. So, and he was stabbed to death. After Andy was arrested, he also claimed that he killed a woman in Taos and stuffed her body in a barrel. The cops actually found a body in a barrel in Taos, but they already had someone in custody for this crime who they thought did it. And they decided that they were set on keeping that as their guy. They didn't really do much digging into Andy. So, years later, the caretaker friend of Andy died in a supposed bar fight, and without him, why can't I think of the fucking word? The prosecutors didn't really have much to go on against Andy, so the case was dropped. And the Reddit poster then goes on to say that he and several other people went to the cops and told them about the fact that Andy was seen with Josh, who is now dead, but police didn't do much of anything. He also stated that some people reported that Andy was going around bragging that he put Josh in a hole. Okay. And like I said, this is just a Reddit post, so we really can't take any of this as a fact because it's a Reddit post, it's not verified, but some of it is. So that's what makes it interesting, you know. This Andy guy really did exist. So the Reddit poster concluded by saying that he wishes the police would have taken these tips seriously and questioned Andy as he suspected. They didn't do it all, and Andy is now incarcerated for a fatal stabbing in New Mexico, and this was as of 2021. And this is really the only known suspect, and we're not even sure if it's really a known suspect because I don't think it's really been officially stated that way. And Josh's case remains solved, but it's solved, and it's not even really solved by the coroner or the police because they're saying it's an accident, but we don't know how it's an accident. mysterious circumstances, the clothes being folded, the way he was found in the chimney, the wooden board up against the chimney, none of that has been solved or answered to this day. So, that is the case of Joshua Maddux, and I mean, it is so confusing. It's one of those cases that really has stuck with me since I heard about it, and I really, really hope that we get more answers on it someday. I really, really want to know why his clothes were in the cabin like that, and it's just so heartbreaking. Like, I just don't, I don't know. And it is weird that they would decide that someone would put him in the chimney. Like, why wouldn't they just, if someone was going to kill him, why wouldn't they just bury him or something else? I don't know, but so that part is weird. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't really make any sense to me at all. So yeah, that is the end of the case, and hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing this story. I know it's a very upsetting story to hear, but hopefully we can get more answers someday, and I really hope that Josh's family can have more closure on the situation, because obviously they're completely stumped as well as to what happened. And yeah, Josh seemed like a really, really cool guy, and he had his whole life ahead of him, so this is extremely upsetting. But that is the end of this one, and thank you for watching / listening, and I'll see you in the next video.